Hey everybody, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today into Love Plus Work by Marcus Buckingham.
Yeah, this one's been getting a lot of attention.
It's all about finding work you actually love.
And not in like a cheesy self-help way.
Right. This is like grounded in actual research.
Yeah, from Gala.
And the ADP Research Institute.
So like real data.
And I think what's so interesting is he starts off with his own story.
Yeah.
He was like this successful executive.
You'd think he'd have it all figured out, right?
Exactly. But he has this panic attack.
And it's like a wake-up call.
Like, okay, maybe outward success doesn't always equal fulfillment.
And you know what's crazy? The PTSD rates.
In these high-stress jobs.
Yeah, could actually be higher.
Than for war veterans.
Isn't that wild?
That's intense.
It really makes you think.
Big time.
About what really matters.
So then he introduces this concept of Wyrd.
Ah, yes, Wyrd.
It's an old Norse word.
Like destiny, but more personal.
Okay, so it's about more than just what you're supposed to do. It's like, what are you uniquely...
Wyrd.
Yeah.
What are your loves and your loathes?
So instead of trying to fit into some mold...
It's about figuring out what makes you tick.
Exactly.
What makes you come alive.
Okay, so how do we uncover our Wyrd? I know he talks about these red threads.
Ah, yes, the red threads.
These activities that make you feel...
energized.
Yeah, like totally in the zone.
Time flies by.
And you feel this sense of mastery.
He gives this great example from his own life.
Okay.
As a kid, he was fascinated by this one thing.
What's that?
The involuntary leg lifting.
What?
Yeah.
Whose leg?
Of spectators at high jump competitions.
Really?
I know. It's like, what's...
So random.
But for him, it was like this early clue.
Interesting.
He was already observing and analyzing human behavior way back then.
That's pretty cool.
Foreshadowing his future career in research.
So think about it. What are some things you've always been drawn to, even if they seem kind of odd?
Right.
For me, it was like taking apart old electronics.
Oh, interesting.
Trying to figure out how they worked.
The little tinker.
Totally. My parents thought I was going to be an engineer.
But you ended up here.
I did.
So these red threads, they can show up early, huh?
Yeah, like even in childhood.
Makes you wonder what those little quirks in kids today.
Might tell us about their future.
Right.
Okay, so how do we actually identify these red threads?
Well, he's got some really practical tools in the book.
Great.
He's got this red thread questionnaire.
Okay.
With 10 feelings to reflect on.
10 feelings.
Yeah, like, when did you last lose track of time? Or, when were you last so engrossed in something that you lost all self-consciousness?
Oh, yeah, I can think of a few times like that.
Right. And by pinpointing, when you've felt those things, you start to see a pattern.
Those activities that really light you up.
Exactly.
For me, it's when I'm writing.
A writer in their element.
I get so absorbed, I completely forget to eat.
That's it. That's a classic red thread experience.
Hours go by and I don't even notice.
And what's important is you don't need to have this whole quilt made of red threads, to find fulfilling work.
So even small bits.
Even small bursts of these love moments can make a big difference.
Okay, so it's not all or nothing.
No, it's about finding those sparks of joy.
He also talks about this, it just clicks feeling as another sign of love.
He uses the example of being fascinated by Dr. Don Clifton's work.
Who's that?
This amazing researcher who focused on human strengths.
Okay.
And Buckingham was blown away by his method for crafting these questions. Yeah, these perfectly worded questions.
To reveal people's strengths.
Exactly. And Buckingham was like obsessed with learning how to do that.
Interesting.
And for him, it just clicked.
Makes sense.
Learning how to develop those powerful questions was effortless.
Like a game.
So think about it. What are some things that felt that way for you?
Definitely learning languages.
Ah, a natural linguist.
It always felt more like fun than work.
And it's that feeling of flow, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like you're in your element.
I love that.
And Buckingham encourages us to capture those love moments.
In these things he calls love notes.
Yes. Have you tried this?
I haven't yet, but I'm intrigued.
It's so simple but powerful.
How does it work?
You start with the phrase, I love it when.
Okay.
And then you get super specific about what you love, answering these 5 does it matter questions.
Ooh, that's interesting.
He gives an example about a student who wrote a love note about playing his 12-string guitar.
I love that example.
The student got really detailed,
Okay.
He loves playing his own compositions for a small group of people he knows well.
Oh, wow. So specific.
It's not just playing guitar, it's the specific context.
That makes it a love moment.
Exactly. So it's about digging deeper.
I love that.
Really understanding the nuances.
Okay, so this really resonates with me.
Yeah.
Because Buckingham shares this story about his own childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently his siblings were all, like, musically gifted.
Like prodigies.
Right. And he struggled.
He was the odd one out?
And he had this realization early on that he just didn't have that natural musical talent.
Which is interesting because it kind of challenges that whole nature versus nurture debate.
Big time.
It really solidifies this concept of unique Wyrd, you know.
Totally, even within the same family.
You can have such different strength.
And speaking of different strengths, Buckingham tells this story about his fiancée, Majel.
Oh, Majel.
She had so much shame about her hometown.
Yeah, it wasn't like the coolest place.
And she was afraid to share her passions.
Those things that truly lit her up.
Which is so sad because her passions were so cool.
I know, right? Like picking ingredients for Portuguese sausage.
What? Really?
I know. Raising champion pigs.
No way!
Yes.
That's awesome.
And she loved appreciating the patterns of plowed fields.
That is so unique.
But she kept it all hidden.
Because she was afraid of what people would think.
It's a classic example of how fear can hold us back.
From embracing those parts of ourselves that make us special.
And her story shows how liberating it can be to finally let go of that fear.
And just be yourself.
Embrace your Wyrd.
I love that.
And that's a great segue into the next part of the book where he tackles those obstacles.
That prevent us from pursuing our loves.
The fears, the doubts, the external pressures.
Yeah, all that stuff that makes it hard to stay true to our word.
This is where it gets really good.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too.
But first, we need to take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
We'll be right back with more of our deep dive into love plus work.
Don't go anywhere. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle these obstacles
that Buckingham outlines in Love Plus Work.
Yeah, the things that can make it so hard to actually pursue work we love.
He starts off with this idea he calls the excellence curse.
The excellence curse.
Have you ever been really good at something you actually hate?
Oh, yeah, totally. I was like the spreadsheet queen back in my old corporate job.
Oh, really?
Everyone praised my analytical skills.
Makes sense.
And I even got promoted because of them.
Right.
But honestly,
Wow.
crunching numbers all day long was soul-sucking.
I can imagine.
I much preferred brainstorm and creative solutions, but somehow
You got stuck.
I ended up stuck in that spreadsheet spiral.
That's a perfect example of the excellence curse.
Is it?
You excel at something, you get recognized for it,
Right.
and then you get pushed further down that path.
Even if it's not what you truly love.
It's like this vicious cycle.
Oh, man.
He gives a few more examples, like ended up managing a team when you crave individual creative work,
Oh, yeah.
or getting pushed into sales when you'd rather be behind the scenes developing products.
So it's like we get trapped by our own competence.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Totally. But how do we break free?
That's the big question, right?
In my case, I mean, I was good at those spreadsheets.
Yeah.
But they weren't my passion.
Right.
It took me a while to realize I needed to make a change
It's not always easy,
and pursue something that actually lit me up.
especially when there's external validation
Yeah, and even financial rewards.
tied to those activities. Buckingham stresses the importance of recognizing when you're on that excellence curse path
Okay.
and finding ways to shift gears.
So how do we do that?
It might mean having some tough conversations,
Oh, yeah.
seeking out new opportunities within your organization,
Okay.
or even making a bolder leap into a different field,
Makes sense.
whatever it takes to break free.
And that kind of leads into another obstacle he talks about, right?
Yeah.
Misinstinct.
Misinstinct.
It's that trap of focusing on the outcomes of work.
Oh, yeah, like the fancy title
The big salary.
instead of the actual day-to-day activities,
It's so easy to get caught up in that why of a job
the status, the perks.
and forget to ask, like, what will I actually doing all day?
That's the crucial question.
He uses the example of top salespeople who are more in love with closing the deal.
Then the product or the customer.
Oh, yeah.
They thrive on the chase the competition.
But they're not actually passionate about what they're selling. You know, when you put it that way, it makes me think about all those job postings
The ones that are all vague.
that focus on the results and the impact you'll have, but they're super vague about the actual tasks.
It's like they're selling a dream without revealing the nitty-gritty details.
Right. Like, what will I actually be doing for 8 hours a day?
So it's on us to be really discerning
Okay.
when evaluating job opportunities.
We don't just get swept up in the promises.
Of prestige or impact.
Right. Dig deeper.
Ask yourself, will I actually enjoy the daily grind of this role?
Because if the core activities
Don't align with your red threads,
it's going to be tough to find that long-term fulfillment.
no matter how impressive the outcomes sound.
Okay, I have a good point.
So let's talk about feedbacking.
Feedbacking.
Buckingham argues that while feedback from others is valuable,
Okay.
only you truly know your loves.
I like that.
It's not about dismissing feedback altogether.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that it's just one data point.
One perspective.
He tells this story about Ashley's experience recording an audiobook.
Okay.
And Ashley got some advice from the host that just didn't feel right.
Even though the advice was well-intentioned?
It wasn't aligned with Ashley's instincts.
It's like you have this internal compass.
What are you doing?
And sometimes feedback can try to steer you off course.
Have you ever been in that situation?
Oh, yeah. Definitely early in my career, someone suggested I should be more assertive.
More outspoken in meetings?
Yeah, they framed it as essential for career advancement, but it just felt so inauthentic to me.
You got to be true to yourself.
I'm more of a thoughtful, reflective person.
And trying to force yourself into that mold
Would have been exhausted.
and ultimately wouldn't have brought you joy.
Exactly.
And in Ashley's case, he ended up trusting his gut
Good for him.
and using his experience as a pianist who sight reads music
Oh, wow.
to find his own rhythm in the recording studio.
I love that.
It's a great reminder that sometimes you have to deviate from the expert advice
Yeah.
and find your own path.
Even if it means taking a risk.
Exactly. And it circles back to Wyrd.
Yeah.
Your path is going to be uniquely yours.
What works for one person.
Might not work for another.
And that brings us to fear fighting.
This one's pretty counterintuitive.
We're always told to face our fears, right?
Step outside our comfort zones.
But Buckingham suggests that instead of trying to conquer our feels,
We should see them as potential signposts.
pointing us towards what we love.
He even admits to being afraid to write the chapter on fear
Really?
because he cared so much about being helpful to the reader.
That's so interesting.
It's a great example of how fear can be intertwined with things we deeply care about.
So if we're not afraid...
Maybe we don't care enough.
Wow, that's a powerful thought.
It is, isn't it?
But of course...
He acknowledges that some fears are definitely unhealthy
Okay.
and need to be addressed.
Like real phobias and stuff.
But he encourages us to view fear as a source of information.
Not something to automatically suppress.
Ask yourself, what is this fear telling me about what I value?
So fear can be a motivator, but it can also be a roadblock.
Exactly.
The key is figuring out which is which.
And the last obstacle he tackles is rate me, rank me.
Rate me, rank me. What's that?
That pervasive problem of comparison
Oh, yeah.
that can really distort our self-perception.
That's everywhere these days.
Social media performance reviews, even casual conversations,
It's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others,
especially in the age of social media.
where everyone's highlighting their achievements and seemingly perfect lives,
Makes you feel inadequate sometimes.
even when you're doing amazing things.
Buckingham offers some powerful coping mechanisms.
Like what?
One that really resonated with me is holding on to your red threads.
Okay.
Imagine you're feeling down because a colleague got a promotion you wanted.
Happens all the time.
Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, remind yourself, why do I love what I do?
That's good advice.
Those red threads, those specific activities that bring you joy.
They become your anchor.
In the storm of comparison, you ground yourself in those things you truly value and enjoy.
Instead of getting swept away by envy or insecurity,
It's like having this internal compass.
that keeps you on track.
Even when the external world is sending all these confusing messages,
So true.
he also emphasizes recognizing your unique galaxy of connections.
Galaxy of connections.
Your experiences, your relationships, your perspectives,
Okay.
they're all uniquely yours.
Like a fingerprint.
There's no one else out there with the exact same constellation.
Comparison really is the thief of joy.
When we're constantly comparing ourselves to others
We lose sight of our own unique gifts.
in accomplishments,
So how do we stop doing that
Buckingham suggests using comparisons to spark curiosity.
instead of judgment?
So instead of feeling threatened by someone else's success,
You could ask, what can I learn from their journey?
it shifts the focus from competition to learning and growth.
That's a good reframe.
And it reminds me of that story he shares about Michelle
Oh, yeah.
being judged by her friends for working on vacation.
That one was tough.
She was actually working to try to save people's jobs,
Wow.
but her friends just saw it as her being a workaholic.
It really illustrates how painful those judgments can be.
Especially when they come from people we care about.
But her story also highlights the importance of staying true to our own values.
Even when they don't align with those of others.
We have to trust our inner compass,
And that leads us to the heart of the book.
where he explores how to actually find love in our work.
He starts by challenging a pretty common assumption.
That most jobs are inherently loveless.
What do you think about that?
I think a lot of people buy into that belief.
They see work as this necessary evil.
Something they have to endure to pay the bills.
But Buckingham suggests we have the power to shift that perspective.
It's not about finding the perfect job.
It's about finding those red threads.
In the work we do.
No matter what it is.
Like embracing that scavenger hunt mentality.
Right. He uses this great metaphor of a career as a scavenger hunt for love.
Oh, I like that.
You start somewhere, maybe not in your dream job, but you keep your eyes open.
For those sparks of joy.
Those activities that resonate with your word.
And you follow those threads as they appear.
Leading you on this winding, evolving path.
It's like that old saying, wherever you go, there you are.
You can bring love and passion to any job if you're willing to look for it.
And even small love moments can make a big difference.
He draws on research from the ADP Research Institute.
Okay.
Showing that those small bursts of love in our workday
can actually boost our engagement and well-being.
It doesn't have to be some grand passion project.
Sometimes it's about finding those little things
that bring you joy and make you feel alive.
It reminds me of this example he gives about the Aztec and Ubuntu philosophies.
Oh, yeah, those are interesting.
They both emphasize the interconnectedness of human beings.
And the importance of relationships.
Suggesting that growth and virtue come from connection?
Not from striving for individual perfection.
We're all in this together.
We need each other to truly thrive.
And I love that anecdote he shares about Michael.
Oh.
Given his tendency to reject new ideas, a nickname.
Immediate rejection syndrome.
It's so funny, but it also highlights how love and attention can actually transform
those seemingly negative traits
into something positive.
Instead of criticizing them.
Michelle found a way to inject some humor and perspective.
It's such a great example of how relationships can help us grow.
And see ourselves in a new light.
And speaking of growth,
Buckingham then dives into some really practical advice on how to build a love plus work career.
He describes this hourglass shape.
Okay.
Start broad focusing to develop mastery, then broadening again.
Connecting it to the work of K. Anders Ericsson.
The 10,000 hours guy.
But what Buckingham emphasizes is that those 10,000 hours will feel a lot less grueling.
If they're spent on activities you love.
Makes sense.
Deliberate practice in areas that align with your red threads.
Becomes more sustainable.
More enjoyable.
And ultimately more effective.
It's not about grinding it out.
It's about leaning into those activities that make you feel alive.
Which brings us back to that scavenger hunt analogy.
Buckingham encourages us to approach our careers with that sense of exploration.
Following those sparks of love.
Even if they lead us down unconventional paths.
He talks about his own decision to move to Nebraska for a job at Gallup.
Not the most obvious choice.
But it was a choice that aligned with his red threads.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most fulfilling careers are the ones we least expect.
It's about staying open to new possibilities.
And being willing to follow those intuitions.
Those nudges from our...
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
From the excellence curse to fear fighting.
To that hourglass career path.
And through it all, Buckingham emphasizes the importance of teams.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
He does it in such a fascinating way.
How so?
Using this example of a 44,000-year-old cave painting.
A cave painting?
I know, right?
That's random.
But bear with me, this painting depicts these half-human, half-animal figures called the Therianthropes.
The Therianthropes.
Yeah.
I knew those.
They're on a hunt.
Okay.
And Buckingham suggests that this ancient artwork
is evidence
that teamwork isn't about suppressing individuality.
It's about maximizing each person's unique strengths. Instead of trying to fit everyone into the same mold.
It's about recognizing and celebrating those differences.
Those unique gifts that each person brings to the team.
It's like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
But in this case, it's about recognizing that each part is unique and valuable.
And that leads us into the final section of the book,
where Buckingham explores how to actually cultivate that love plus work mentality.
This is where it gets really practical.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into love plus work. We've talked about Wyrd, those red threads, and all the things that can get in the way. But how do we actually cultivate a love plus work life? It sounds great in theory, but is it really possible?
Buckingham doesn't shy away from that question. He acknowledges that there's this whole suck-it-up mentality out there.
Just grit your teeth and endure work you hate.
Which so many people just accept as reality.
Work to live, don't live to work.
But spending the majority of our waking hours doing something we dread is just soul-crushing.
Not to mention, it's probably not good for business either.
He makes that point too. When we design jobs as if there's no love in them, we end up with disengaged, unproductive employees.
A lose-lose situation for sure. So how do we shift that mindset?
Well, Buckingham talks about love as this source of energy that needs to flow.
It's not like finding the perfect job and then coasting along happily ever after.
Right. He challenges that whole work-life balance idea.
It's not about achieving some static equilibrium, right?
Life is messy. It's dynamic. Our work and personal lives are constantly in flux.
So it's more about finding those moments of love and joy in every aspect of our lives.
Whether it's at work, at home, in our hobbies, our communities.
Integrating those red threads throughout our entire experience.
And he even shares some pretty personal stories from his own life.
Oh yeah? Like what?
About going through a divorce, selling his company.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
But even in the midst of those challenges,
he was able to find those sparks of love.
And use them to fuel his forward momentum.
I think what's so powerful about his approach is that he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
He's not just peddling this overly optimistic, think positive message.
Right. He acknowledges that life throws curveballs.
And sometimes those curveballs can knock us off course.
So what do we do then?
It's in those moments that it's even more important to reconnect with those things that bring us joy.
Those red threads.
That remind us who we are and what we value.
Cultivating that resilience, that ability to bounce back.
Even when things get tough.
And remember when he talks about the importance of naming and claiming those unique quirks?
Those things that make you you.
He gives the example of his own tendency to initially reject new ideas.
Which Michel playfully dubbed immediate rejection syndrome.
I love that.
It's such a great example of how self-awareness combined with love and attention from others can help us transform those potentially negative traits into something positive.
By naming it, they were able to take away its power.
It became this inside joke, this shared understanding that helped him navigate that tendency more effectively.
It's a beautiful reminder that we don't have to be perfect to be loved and accepted.
In fact, it's often those imperfections, those quirks that make us most interesting and valuable.
So true. Okay, and then he circles back to the importance of teams.
But he kind of flips the script on how we usually think about teamwork.
He says the point of a team isn't to suppress individuality.
It's to maximize it.
I love that.
He uses that example again of the cave painting with the therianthropes.
The half-human, half-animal figures.
And he suggests that those figures represent the unique strengths that each individual brings to the team.
It's not about everyone being the same.
It's about everyone contributing their unique gifts to achieve a shared goal.
So you might be the hunter, the gatherer, the strategist, the artist.
Each role is essential.
And each individual is valued for their unique contribution.
That's what makes a team truly powerful.
And Buckingham argues that this is the key to creating truly engaging and productive workplaces.
Where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their best.
It's a powerful vision of what the future of work could look like.
A future where work is not just a means to an end,
but a source of meaning, connection, and joy.
To wrap it all up, Buckingham ends the book with a really thought-provoking challenge.
I'm intrigued. What's that?
He asks us to reconsider that common greeting, "It's nice to meet you."
Instead of viewing others as potential rivals or threats.
He encourages us to approach each encounter with curiosity and openness.
See each introduction as an opportunity to explore a new galaxy of experience. That's a beautiful way to end this deep dive. It reminds us that the world is full of wonder and possibility, and that every interaction has the potential to spark new connections, new ideas, and new forms of love. So as you go about your day, your week, your life, remember to pay attention to those red threads, those sparks of love, those moments that make you feel truly alive.
And don't be afraid to share those loves of the world.
You never know what amazing things might happen when you do. This has been The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring Loveless work with us, and we'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that matters to you. Until then, keep seeking those red threads and keep those love notes flowing.